In a lot of ways, the Chicago Bulls are right back where they were this time last year, preparing for a second playing game against the Miami Heat. But in this game today, I'm going to talk about why it's more at stake than just getting the right to face off against the Boston Celtics in the first round of the playoffs. We're also going to preview the game overall and react to comments from Joakim Noah on the OGs podcast. We're going to get into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. And there's more at stake for this game tonight, and we'll preview the game and talk about the ins and outs and what the Bulls need to do to find wins. But when you look at this, there's a lot at stake in this game against the Miami Heat. In a lot of ways, this could be the lasting impression that Bulls fans and other people have as far as the growth of Coby White, Ayo Dosunmu, who have been such a major and big story. And one of the most positive stories with the Chicago Bulls this season is their growth. And people are looking at Coby White to see if he can repeat the performance that he did the other night against the Atlanta Hawks. Not necessarily saying he has to score 42 points again, but the leadership, the vocality, the stepping up in the biggest moments possible, the refinement of his game, right? Those are the types of things that we have in going into this. But more than any of it, it's the way that the front office is prepared to use this to talk about or to inform what they're going to do with the team this offseason. And while common thought amongst Bulls fans are, if this Bulls team goes and gets out this play-in tournament, they take on the Boston Celtics, right, is AK and Eversley going to look at it and say this is another reason to remain competitive and keep this same team together? Or is it going to be hey, let's use this? Now, we saw what we can get with this version of the roster, right? With the roster that's flawed, let's try to refine it and pick and bring in things that this roster so clearly has needed for years, right? There's two ways to think about it. Now, we've always, lately with this front office, the last few years has gone on, they hold on to every shred of anything that they can to excuse lack of movement. And that could very well be down the pipeline again. But I would hope that this front office, if this team pushes in the way that they look and says, this team just needs something. We need some shooting. We need some rim protection, right? We need a more mobile center. We need to be able to play faster. Whatever those type of things are, right? And improves this team and makes a move to try to push it. And make no mistake about it, as well as the going into the offseason with the trade talk around Zach LaVine, this game also has some stakes to that. If this Bulls team, with everything that they've been missing, with Patrick Williams, Zach LaVine being gone, right, makes it into the postseason where they could not last year with most of the team healthy, what does that then do to the negotiations that have to happen this offseason with Patrick Williams or potentially the trade talks with Zach LaVine? Does that make this front office look at it and think that Zach LaVine is more expendable than what they even thought he was prior to that, right? So there's a lot at stake tonight when the Chicago Bulls take on the Miami Heat. And, whether it's right or wrong or whether we all agree or we disagree with what the outcomes or how we should view this, it's a lot there, right? And everything has its own dual nature, right? And much to my Zach LaVine point. Or the front office can look at it and say, hey, we just made it out the play-in without Zach. Let's try to get Zach back on board. Let's get him focused, right? Let's get him to add in and buy into what this team is building. Maybe now the winning can help cure some of what was lacking there with Billy Donovan and Zach LaVine before. Maybe, right? So it's a lot of different perspectives that this could bring about. Whatever happens, but make no mistake about it. The future and the competitiveness of this team, a lot of it does hinge on this. And I wish we had one of those front offices where I could say they would be aggressive either way. We don't know. For some front offices, getting a run like the Bulls had at points in this season would make them say, hey, we got to reward these players. We got to find a way to improve it. Some front offices, like it seems like ours does, will look at it and say, hey, we're right there, right? We could be one of those teams there. The East is so bunched up, we could be right there. Maybe we just need better health, right? And that's the thing that kind of always falls short, right? With this front office is not just having a front office that you can trust. On a couple of episodes ago, the main topic was what AK and Eversley can learn from the other GMs in Chicago, specifically Jeff Pagliosha with the Chicago Sky and Ryan Poles with the Chicago Bears, right? But, more so than that, that's a great conversation to have. But even more so than all of that, it's just about how do you build your team, right? How do you achieve your goals? And if your goals, and that's the thing, if your goals is just making it out the play-in into the playoffs, which it does seem like they have dropped those goals too, we're in for a long, long time with this front office, man. But like I said, there is definitely more at stake than just winning a playing game today, than just getting to go face off against the Boston Celtics. There's a lot more at stake than that. And hopefully these players understand that moment, right? And especially, watching the OGs podcast with Joakim Noah kind of just brought about how competitive those old Bulls teams were, how truly competitive, right? The fact that they just fought so hard. And maybe this is something that sparks that in these young players as well. And like I said, postseason experience before for Ayo, for Kobe, as far as being a major role for those players. And even Dalen Terry having a larger role than what he had for large parts of the season. All that can be drastically important for whatever the next phase of that Chicago Bulls team is. But before we can get to that next phase, we do have to actually play the game. So tonight against the Boston Celtics, I'm already skipping ahead. Tonight against the Miami Heat, of course, many have heard that Terry Rozier and Jimmy Butler are both going to be out for the Miami Heat in this game. That's kind of not surprising. Terry Rozier already ruled out, for the postseason. And then you had Jimmy Butler. Once it started being talked about it as an MCL injury, I think the writing was on the wall for that, right? MCLs are tricky things. There's optimism now per Rhodes that Alex Caruso will play now that some of that swelling has gone down. And Caruso even said after the last game that he does expect to play tonight against Miami. And so, DeMar DeRozan has also talked about, being on the plane and realizing, hey, we're about to go back to Miami again. In a lot of ways, this could be a revenge game for the Bulls. I said in the opening that the Bulls are right back where they were around this time last year. Second playing game, playing the Miami Heat. This time now, the Miami Heat don't have Jimmy Butler, who played such an amazing role for that team over the course of the season. When you look at the matchups between the Bulls and the Heat this past season, it's really kind of hard to take away too much from it because both teams were so different at that point. Zach LaVine played in most of those games. He played in the first two, I think. Patrick Williams played in all four. Tyler Hero played in all four games as well. Bam Adebayo only played in 2 games. And so, it's very different teams. Jaime Jaquez, who I went over last time, who's played really well against the Chicago Bulls in his rookie year, is going to be relied on even more heavily now coming into this game. So, the Miami Heat, who finished the regular season 46-36, they had a +1.7, a point differential that was 18th best in the NBA. They had the 21st best offensive rating in the league and the 5th best defensive rating. Now, that's not overall offense and defense, that's just the ratings. The Chicago Bulls had the 19th best offensive rating in the league and the 22nd best defensive rating in the NBA this past season. So this is going to be a game where the chess match part of it is going to probably be the most important part. It's probably going to be the part that stands out. Eric Spoelstra, we know, is a tactician. He gets the most out of that roster. And Billy Donovan, we Bulls fans look at it as he leaves a lot to be desired for in the way that he coaches and things like that. So this is going to be a game where the Bulls cannot overlook the Miami Heat. I don't care that Jimmy Butler is gone. You have to act like they're there. You almost have to treat this team like they're a defending champion because that's how hard this team is going to compete tonight against the Chicago Bulls. You got Tyler Hero, who can step up and fill it up. If Tyler Hero can match the effort of Kobe White, right, as far as scoring-wise, that's going to keep them in this game. Then you look at Bam Adebayo, who almost scored 20 points per game this season. And what he brings both offensively and defensively is not something either that you can really overlook at all yet either. Duncan Robinson may or may not play. So then it does come back down to Jaime Jaquez and how he's able to perform, take advantage of mismatches, things like that. So this is not a team in the Miami Heat that is a slump by any stretch, right? Even without Jimmy Butler, this is still a team that's going to compete. This is still a team that's going to come in here and try to win through the execution and the system. Heat culture is a real thing. And it just is. It's something that I do wish we had here in Chicago, is a true type culture like they have in Miami. But I tell you that, like I said, you got players that can absolutely fill it up on this team. Caleb Martin still has been a player that has killed the Chicago Bulls before. And the thing that makes the Miami Heat as well kind of special in a sense is the fact that every player on this team knows and understands their role. Now, of course, without Jimmy Butler being in that game, that role is going to have to increase some. But don't overlook Nikola Jovic either in this game, and how his versatility can be a big thing for the Miami Heat, and how the Miami Heat can use him before. He's had games of going off on 20 plus performances before, and finished the season on his best month of the season, of averaging over 12 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal per game as well. Nikola Jovic is a player that can absolutely, is the type of player, I should say, that has killed the Chicago Bulls before, right? So this is still a team that has depth, not necessarily the best quality depth, right? Not saying that, but this still is a team that does have depth. This is a team that still does have fight, that will compete. And that's something that the Bulls have found themselves on the wrong side of many a times this season. So I really, if the Bulls are going to come in here and play hard, then I want them to come in here and play hard. I want them to fight to win. I want to see the edge of the team. We are coming off one of our best performances on one of the biggest stages that we've had, and I want to see that continue. And the Bulls cannot, and I repeat, cannot overlook this Miami Heat team. And Billy Donovan and his coaching is going to be a big part in this as well. The lineups. I tell you what, even with the Miami Heat having the injuries that they do have, Eric Spoelstra's not afraid to go deep into that bench. He just isn't. And the Chicago Bulls are a team that we saw last night. We couldn't even get 2 solid minutes out of Javon Carter without, a team going on a run. So when you look at this, first, how do we defend Tyler Hero and keep him from getting hot? He had an inefficient night in the first playing game. Can we continue that? But when you look at him and him trying to at least match the scoring of Kobe White, he has the ability to do that. Then you got to look at Jaime Jaquez and the DeMar DeRozan matchup. DeMar, who in that first playing game against the Miami Heat played a masterful game, really was focused, was cerebral in a lot of ways, let the other players get the shots, picked his spots, and did it well when he got those opportunities. And then Bam and Nikola Vucevic. That matchup is going to be hugely important. And don't overlook Kevin Love either. Kevin Love, who's had big games against the Chicago Bulls recently. We're talking about as of this season, him competing on the boards with Andre Drummond is going to be a big part of that as well. And so, Ayo, he can be an X factor for the Bulls, just like Jovic, or Caleb Martin could be for the Miami Heat. So you don't want to overlook either of those players at all. Alex Caruso's playing in this game, and how his defense and the mentality and the edge that he brings as well. And by the way, the Chicago Bulls have one Javonte Green, who is definitely an X factor for that Chicago Bulls team, and I can't wait to see how he performs on this type of stage. The Bulls have to want it tonight, and if they want it and play with that level of fight that we've seen in them in brief stints before, then yeah, we can win this game. But we also have the Bulls on the other side of this that have shown that they don't step up in certain moments. So let's hope that we see the better version of the Bulls, right? That we see that version of this team, because if we do, this is going to be a fun game. And I think either way, this is going to be a very competitive game tonight for the Chicago Bulls. And let me know what you guys think on that down below. But from talking about a team that I want to see compete, let's talk about one of the greatest competitors that we've had in the Chicago Bulls uniform, and that is Joakim Noah. Joakim Noah on the OG podcast with Udonis Haslem and Mike Miller. This was I would really say to everybody, go and watch this full interview. It's a little over an hour, and it's worth every single minute. I'm going to play some clips from it here, but specifically just Joakim's mentality. Joakim talked about how losing sticks with you. And I'm going to go ahead and play a clip from that now. He said this.
Y'all had a real whip over there.
What? We did, but D-Rose?
A real whip over there.
Booze?
Talk about some of them things the Miami Heat, Chicago Bulls.
It's crazy because you can talk about it now. It took a while to be able to tell you. Y'all got the championships about it. I didn't win no champion. We had to get through you guys every time. And I'm almost 40 years old, and there's a lot of trauma that comes with losing at the highest level. You know what I'm saying? The world's watching. These are the biggest games. You train your whole year thinking about these moments, and you fall short. This is not an easy thing, even 10 years later, to talk about. Like, this is how much this means to me personally. Like, when you talk about winning and losing, but I cherish all those moments because they are all learning experiences. How can you get better? You know, the LeBron happened way before Miami Heat for us. This is like, how the f are we gonna get through that? You know what I'm saying? Now you over here with D Wade. Like, you know, it's interesting because I hear you guys talking about it, and the first thing you were talking about is, man, I remember when we lost to y'all opening night. That wasn't even like the big games, but like competitors, when I talk to competitors, it's like they remember the losing just as much as they remember the winning.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Like competition, and we keep saying, but competition is a man. You know, so when I remember those rivalries, and it's deep, and it's still not easy to talk about.
No, I understand. No, listen.
You know, when you hear him say that there's trauma that comes with that, right? Like, you know that that's not just hyperbole. That's not him just saying, hey, like this is traumatic. No, this is him saying that this still sticks with him as the competitor and an amazing player that Joakim Noah turned himself into, that he worked and fought hard, not being able to get over that hump. And then at times and hell, we won the regular season matchup against that Miami Heat team so many times, but for not to be able to get over that hump and win a ring, you can see that that's something that still sticks with Joakim Noah. And in that quote, right, this is how much this shit means to me personally. When you talk about winning or losing, that is something that's felt. And I wish that, and we have competitors on the team, make no mistake about it, right? But competitive nature at the level that Joakim Noah has it's different. Not everybody has that, right? And so for a team in the Chicago Bulls now that does lack identity, getting to see one of the players that was the reason why we had one of the best identities in franchise history, of course, other than the 2 3-peats, it hits a little bit different, especially at this time and phase that we are with the Chicago Bulls. But I think also it highlights the fact of why Joakim Noah probably could never get into coaching, right? It's because look at how much this shit means to him. And Joakim Noah also talked about being a leader, where he said this.
Hard. And it's, you know, you're right, the losing makes you sick.
It's sick.
No, it does.
Sick.
It does.
Sick.
But it's like, because you have screws loose. Like, we're not normal people. Like, this is modern day gladiator type you're talking about. Like, nobody will, okay, how you, no, it's true. It's true. Like, okay, if you're gonna be an emotional leader in a locker room, then you can't be normal. You think a February game when it's the 4th game of the week and everybody's exhausted and you got to get your soldiers right. Like, it's a real thing.
Yeah.
And I really believed it. I believed this shit with all my heart. Like, yo, I want to win a championship. That's all I care about. That's the way I was raised. That's the way my father raised me. That's the way my grandfather raised me. It's deep. They play different sports. It doesn't matter.
Yes.
The mentality is the same. Screws loose. My father was a tennis player. They say a French tennis player. African tennis player. Does that even exist? Do you even hear of an African tennis player? No. Like, the sacrifice, he left home, he was 11 years old. Like, that's the energy that I'm getting. That's my father in my ear. Like, that's the kind of competition, what you have to do, the sacrifices you have to make. Wake up early, train hard every day. Yeah. Like, yeah. And not just telling me, doing it. Like, I see the work that goes into it.
You know, Joakim was special in the sense that while Derrick Rose was the leader of that team, and we got comments from Joe on Derrick Rose as well, that we know that Joakim Noah was the heart, right? It was the heart of that team. That team went and the crowd, right? When you just look at everything to go back to the era I talked about before, I don't talk a lot about the 2 3-peat era. I don't talk a lot about the Derrick Rose era because it's nostalgia baiting in a way, right? And maybe in a way too, for me, I don't like to go back to talking about that time period because that was one of the most fun times. And I never want to kind of rely just on the nostalgia part to make this channel grow. But it just, hey, listen, watching this interview was so special. And watching his comments on Derrick Rose, man, it was even more special, right? Him saying this.
Who was just somebody that when he came in, he brought hope to the whole, not just to the team, to the whole city.
Wow, that's
You
big.
know,
That's big.
hope is a powerful emotion.
Yes.
When you believe and you have hope to win, it's a different workout.
Yeah.
It's a different lift. You know,
Yeah.
when you're losing big and you're not going to play in the playoffs, you're professional. You work out, you're professional. But this is deeper than that. This is hope to win a championship. That's what he represented for, and it became something that was like bigger than him. You know, so young, youngest
Yes,
MVP.
yes,
So
yes.
I was living all that with him, and I think that, you know, just the way people turned on him and all this because of the expectations, all this shit. You sign a big deal with Adidas, you know, you signed the max deal, Derrick Rose rights, all this. Anyway, it was just a lot going on, and he couldn't do what he wanted when he got hurt. But before, and I respect him to this day. I consider him like one of my closest brothers.
Yeah, ultimate respect.
What he went through, the humility, the way he carried himself when he was at the top of his thing, you know, represent what he represents, being a kid from the South Side, from Chicago. Like, every time we wanted to make him proud, and we wanted him to represent all those things. So when I stepped on the court, it was just as much for him than it was for myself.
Like, Derrick was so special of a player. And I think, you know, when you hear other players now that were so far removed from it, me and Pat, the designer, were talking about this a little while ago. When you hear people talk about Derrick Rose and you see the reverence and somewhat the fear that they had of the competitor that Derrick Rose was, it reminds you of just that rise. That the fact that it was taken away so early into what should have been him going into his prime, that was such a great and amazing era for Chicago Bulls, man. And listen, it's just, hey, it's different, man. It's something that for a lot of people, and I think like for my children, right? Derrick Rose, in a lot of ways in that era, they hold that in the same reverence that we hold the Michael Jordan, the Scottie Pippen Bulls, right? That we hold the first or second three-peat in, because that was the greatest that they've seen this team be in that time. And so it's definitely a different feeling, and it definitely, when you're reminded of that, it takes you to a different place, man. And you know, Joakim Noah just talking about it. I love that he's on there. I love that he was on there talking with people that he competed against that were on that Miami Heat team. And you know, even hearing them talk about how it sucked to play the Chicago Bulls, right? And that's what I really want and hope at some point this team can get back to, is to be that team that people hate playing against. And, you know, that has that identity. And we haven't had that for so long. And when you're strived of it, it really sticks out when you go back and look at the times where you did have that. And to say for what you will, yeah, the Chicago Bulls never won a title during that Derrick Rose era, but I guarantee you every team in the East hated playing the Chicago Bulls. But one thing that Joakim Noah did hate was the city of Cleveland. And you know, we couldn't make it out a Joakim Noah interview without it coming up. He said this.
You ain't enjoy your time in that stink-ass town. Stop it. The is you talking about? It's a goddamn lie. The you lying too. This the OG show. We can't lie to y'all.
You can't lie, huh?
Yeah.
You get ask you a question.
But I think this is deep, right? Because still to this day, that's people really hit different. When I see somebody from Cleveland, like, they not happy about this. Like, they still, you know, people really, you disrespected where I'm from. But what people have to understand, that it had nothing to do with Cleveland. It had everything to do with that LeBron James. Like, yo, every year you're losing. You know you have to get through him to get to the glory.
Yes.
That's where it came from. Like, people trying to make it like, yo, this side, this is our side. Like, okay, that's just you're looking at it. You're looking at it wrong. This is competition. This is where you represent. I don't give a about what you represent. This is Chicago Bulls. Like, that's all it was. LeBron was so good, he was stunting on us. He was stunting on us. Like, he over here dancing before the game. I got Pete Myers in my ear talking about, yo, you see this? you see this shit? I'm a competitor.
Yeah.
I see this shit. This shit drove me nuts.
Yeah.
So I had to let him know. But because it's LeBron James and all this shit, now people think it's like there's other cities that are just as whack as Cleveland.
Yes.
And that's just Joe being Joe, man. Such a special player, and such a he meant so much to the city of Chicago. He continues to mean so much to the city of Chicago, man. And I really wish you can bottle up that competitiveness of Joakim Noah, and that we can implant that into this version of the team as well, or every version of the Chicago Bulls team forever, right? But it's just, remembering that time, man, and to hear him, to still say, it's not just about Cleveland, but there's still cities just as whack as Cleveland, because Cleveland is a terrible ass city. But that's my time for today, guys. At least for now. I'll be back for the live streams tonight. Pre-game, halftime, post-game shows, all live on the channel tonight, as we are for every game. Make sure you guys stay in tune with us. Lock in with us as well. You can follow us at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.